is apium. In the spring, in every hive, there was a mother and a whole family. Although 3 years ago, we had quite a few losses. But some of our bees are dying. We do not know the reason. Probably it is some virus that causes death, especially during winter time. But here, we had no such situation. The problem was virosis among bees. Of course, we use prevention. We're using stripes during winter. We always do. But still in spring, the problem was often there, and we had to use smoke extraction and medicines. This year, we don't have to use them. We didn't notice virosis in any of our hives, so we didn't use any conventional treatment. That is why we want to use probio microorganisms as a prevention method. It is planned for this year. I encourage everyone to restore biodiversity in every homestead. In every homestead, not only in the ecological ones, because today it is crucial to survive, but also to make a living. And to have that certainty, we have to do everything for as low a cost as possible. This will always be a role of beneficial microorganisms. In total, I have 1,200 hectares of arable land. What I have noticed last year, on the part where it was always wet, is that this spring there is no such problem. Last year's potatoes were practically free from scab, although I had problems with scab before. I suppose that the probio microorganisms caused the absence of scab. In the potato industry, they use hot water and steam to get rid of superficial scab, and it is no longer a problem. But when you're selling potatoes to individuals and scab is visible, it disqualifies you right away, and you have a problem with sales. The other thing are the symptoms of soil looseness that I've noticed last year. On the parts of land where soil used to be heavy, compacted, during digging, you could notice that it was less compacted. There were less lumps. The soil was loose. Here we can store 3,300 or 3,400 tons per chamber. I have 2 chambers. That gives 6,800 tons. And there I have the third repository in a system of chest pellets, about 1,500 tons. In general, potato is getting drier, and there, on the wall, when there were potatoes, with a good ventilation system, using the probio microorganisms, on this wall, all we could find would be 2 or 3 rotten potatoes only. The presence of beneficial microflora will guarantee results that everyone will see. The question is often asked, but when will I see it? The answer is very soon. Changes in soil are visible in the first year already. Changes in nutrients that plants can use also. I was bred in horticulture. What I can see, almost no one else can, because I am amongst these plants all the time, from the very beginning. For this day, for me, the biggest catastrophe would be the lack of the probio microorganisms. The end. I would be totally helpless. I detach it, take a second and let it go. Stems that normally should smell bad, and look at them. They decay dry. Those microorganisms came in contact with my water that was of such poor quality that it was staining my flowers. And here, I have perfect plants. In such humidity, I fertilize with microorganisms all the time, just like here. This is fertilizing every 3 or 4 weeks. But this year, with such humidity, everything has collapsed, and it is hard to come up with any logical fertilizing. Leaves taken from the ground are dry. Just see. I didn't bring it here. It would have gotten wet during the night. I make ground analysis twice a year now. I used to make it 4 times a year when my colleague professor asked me, "What is going on? This is increasing, that has been increasing. What is going on? I have brought fertilizers unnecessarily. The only thing I'm using now is nitrogen. I have cultivated it before. I had beneficial microorganisms. I have been cultivating these leaves for 10, 12 years. It was a tragedy." Today, if anyone would ask me about chemical fungicides, I would reply to them, "What is it?" Because I don't understand. I don't have any need to use them. I don't have fungi. The end. That's it. Please, find here any spot, any stain. 2 liters of probiotic-microorganisms for every 5,000 liters of water. But all the time, non-stop. And they are not flushing to the neighbor's field, but just staying in the soil. I can see that I have less green flies. There was one spraying this summer, and I don't have a problem with pests here. There is a problem with snails, or rather, there was. Because snails are present, but they don't do any harm. I had problems with thunderbugs too. The thunderbugs are pests. I used those 2 liters since a year and a half ago, or 2 years at the longest. I take notes. If anyone would like to see, I can show them. And since last fall, there is no note that I was fighting with thunderbugs. I can say that I don't know what diseases are, because right here, there are none. And I can also say that I don't know what pests are. For 4 years, I haven't been using artificial fertilizers. The only organic fertilizer was sludge, after crop from charlock, and of course all organic matter that is left from straw, weeds, everything plowed together. I added microorganisms, and in this way awakened life in the soil. We can see that I won't have any problem with sticking a metal rod 1 meter deep into the soil. There is no plow sole, no blocking of water adoption. The soil sucks in the water. This process makes stubble soft when walking on it, and after harvest it is really hard to obtain. The soil is friable. You have nutrients and increasing content of humus. We can see that the proper decomposition of straw took place, proper decomposition of manure, proper decomposition of organic matter, every matter from green aftercrop to other compost. 1 year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I used the probiotic microorganisms for the first time. And the result was that my neighbor's tobacco was eaten by pests and mine was practically unaffected. What happened? The thunderbugs were preying on his tobacco, but on my tobacco too. It's just that my tobacco was so resistant that there were no effects of harm and productivity was actually much higher. Soil is not hard. It is friable. I have been cultivating this soil for almost 20 years, and practically all this time with no shift. That is why now I can see results. Before, there were places where there was no tobacco. Here you have an example. This yellow tobacco, that is disease, exactly, but this farmer doesn't use probiotic microorganisms. Notice that leaves are stunted and the disease is already visible. All this tobacco is artificially forced. The condition and strength of this plant is weaker. My field is coming back to life. There is no farmer. He was here in the morning. He has 4 hectares of strawberries. He is in Wrocław, selling them on the market. He let us come here and see. These are strawberries grown using the probiotic microorganisms. This is a 2-year plantation. The soil was inoculated with microorganisms in the amount of 30 liters per hectare. Before, for several years, tobacco was cultivated here. This year has been very difficult because it was wet. There is mold and fungi. But they are optimistic because even though last year the weather was better, they still had more fungi and fungal diseases than this year. But this year they are using more pro-biomicroorganisms. See, picking has been going on for a month already, and they still have strawberries. The situation is good. First spring is at the very beginning of vegetation, early spring, when there are a lot of fungal diseases, after winter, after snow. This is the first punch of microorganisms, 15 liters. The second punch is before the season, but not in a flowering phase. The third spraying is just before picking. Let's take an example, 2 baskets of strawberries, one sprayed and one not. The one that wasn't sprayed will begin to rot and get moldy, and the one sprayed with microorganisms will give back the water and will only get dry. The principle of giving support to the plants is to support them when their effort is greatest. For example, when the buds burst, they open up and there is a possibility of an infection. Pro-biomicroorganisms are manufactured only by the national and regional microorganism centers of Probiotics Poland, promoted and distributed by the BioWorld Limited, regional centers of microorganisms and certified consultants. For me, the whole adventure with microorganisms is like another university degree. I think that it is a field that for sure gives me a lot of humility, because I get in touch with the part of the world that I cannot actually see. I can only intuitively feel, expect the results, and be convinced that these will be good results. I can say, for example, that the harvests here have surprised me a lot. Here the soil is weak, very weak, and from 2.2 hectares I harvested 15 tons. I didn't count on such results. I calculated now what costs I had and what costs I could have had for a comparable harvest. Everyone will wonder if it was a miracle. But no, not in this case. It is just the potential of a healthy soil. I didn't have to use fungicides because fungal diseases on cereal didn't occur enough to cause damage and significantly weaken the plant yield. We shouldn't state that it is a wonderful solution for every case. That would be a mistake. But certainly, this is an indication that there is a number of solutions in nature that can help us and make our field, our soil, our homestead more efficient, and not for the price of artificial substances that we will implement without knowing their results. Let's have some more restraint to chemical substances. Just open our minds more to what is natural and not be afraid of it.
Otwórzmy się bardziej na to, co jest naturalne. Użyjmy to, nie bójmy się tego.
Dobrosław, and a word of the president of the Polish Agricultural Social Insurance for the pro-biomicroorganisms and probiotic products. The practical effects of using compositions of beneficial microorganisms were explained by parts of the movies Creatures Inside Us, Silence of the Bees and Life Running Out of Control were used in the film.